Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Pope Francis was in Israel last week where he visited the Temple Mount and entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Earlier, the pontiff traveled to Bethlehem where he was exposed to outright lies and Palestinian propaganda. The leader of the world's Roman Catholics was clearly influenced by PA leader Mahmoud Abbas and vowed to develop relations between the Vatican and what he called the State of Palestine. The Pope also described the terrorist leader as a peacemaker. En route to Jerusalem from Bethlehem, Pope Francis stopped at the security barrier, which protects Israel from Palestinian terrorists, and the Pope prayed over graffiti which said, "Free Palestine." Top of the agenda for talks between the Pope and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was the issue of that security barrier and Israel's reasons for building it. Erin Viner has more on that story.
Yes, Yochanan. The picture of the Pope's historic prayer for peace at the Bethlehem barrier will be etched in history. But Israeli officials made sure to not let it distort the reality of the situation in Israel and the need for a security fence. It was the first issue that Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned to the pontiff during their talks. Netanyahu said that the security barrier has saved thousands of lives and that if Palestinian terrorism and incitement against Israel would stop, there would be no need for measures such as the barrier. Netanyahu also made sure to address Mahmoud Abbas' claims of Christian persecution in Israel, saying that every Christian holy site in the country is being preserved and that the rights of Christians are protected by the state. The Israeli leader added that, to his sorrow, this isn't true in other countries in the Middle East, stressing that Israel is the only nation in the region to ensure the complete freedom of worship to members of all faiths while guarding the holy places and extending religious freedoms to all.
Several members of Knesset and other influential Israeli leaders called on Pope Francis to unseal the Vatican archives, which pertain to the Holy See's relationship with the Jewish people. Some call for Holocaust-era documents to be released to determine the Vatican's culpability in the massacre of over 6 million Jews during World War II. Others urge the Vatican to release information on relics stolen from the Jewish temple. The Second Temple was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era, when the Roman leader Titus laid siege to and sacked the city of Jerusalem. The temple artifacts were taken back to Rome as booty. Many people believe that these treasures, including the great menorah, have been hidden in the Vatican and are demanding that they be returned to Jerusalem. Pope Francis has previously advocated for releasing certain Vatican archives dealing with the period of the Holocaust. Israeli officials hope that the Pope's trip to the Holy Land will encourage him to speed up the process of making these important documents public.
A Turkish court has ordered the arrests of 4 former Israeli commanders over the alleged roles they performed during the 2010 raid on the Mavi Marmara ship. The retired intelligence and IDF officers are being tried in absentia by an Istanbul court, where prosecutors are seeking multiple life sentences for them all. The Turkish judge is requesting that Interpol issue a red notice for the commanders' arrests. Israel has issued a formal apology for the loss of life that resulted during the raid and engaged in discussion of monetary compensation that resulted when 6 civilian ships attempted to breach the naval blockade on Gaza. 10 pro-Palestinian Turkish activists died of injuries that they sustained when they violently attacked IDF commandos attempting to board the Turkish-flagged vessel with knives and metal bars after ignoring numerous warnings to not enter the area. Since that time, Jerusalem and Ankara have worked to normalize diplomatic ties that ruptured in the aftermath of the incident. This latest court verdict is obstructing those efforts, and and Israeli officials say that the charges are tainted by political motives and are asking Interpol to not intervene.
Egyptians went to the polls last week in yet another presidential referendum. Former Egyptian military chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi entered the race as the frontrunner and is expected to be declared the winner once all the ballots are counted. Just 1 year ago, the Egyptian military ousted President Mohamed Morsi of the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood organization. He and members of the Muslim Brotherhood have since stood trial and have been convicted for their crimes in Egypt. Many were sentenced to death. Cairo has declared the Brotherhood a terrorist organization. Hundreds of Egyptian security forces have been killed this year in the war against the Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda forces operating in the Sinai Peninsula.
Investigation continues into the shooting of 4 people by a lone gunman at the Jewish Museum in Brussels. 2 of the victims have been identified as Mira and Emmanuel Riva from Israel, who were in the Belgian capital to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary. Authorities in the Western European nation have released footage of the incident captured by security cameras and are investigating the incident as a likely case of terrorism. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said this act of murder is the result of constant incitement against Jews and their state, adding that slander and lies against Israel continue to be heard on European soil, while crimes against humanity and acts of murder perpetrated in the region are being systematically ignored.
Just hours after the vicious shooting attack in Brussels, 2 Jews were brutally beaten outside a synagogue in Paris. The American Jewish Committee released a statement strongly condemning the 2 attacks. It said one anti-Semitic tragedy on the heels of another underscores the very real danger facing Jews in the heart of Europe today. The AJC and the Anti-Defamation League have been working to raise awareness of the increasing anti-Semitic sentiment which is spreading throughout Europe.
A delegation of governmental officials from China have just attended the first ever economic summit with Israel at the Knesset in Jerusalem. The event was organized by the Israel-China Interflow Association, which works to initiate and foster business between the 2 nations by connecting Israeli companies and entrepreneurs with Chinese investors. ICIA's CEO, Remy Reinstein, said that his organization is uniquely positioned to help Israeli companies develop their networks and successfully achieve market entry in China because it works with hundreds of venture capitalists in the Asian nation who want to do business with Israel. Reinstein went on to point out that Israel is an expert in agrotech, irrigation, water management, bioengineered seeds, pesticides, fish farms, and much more. China has the capital to fund Israeli startups to develop the products and to market them to the world.
A delegation of Israeli Knesset members was in Latvia and Estonia last week, establishing the 29th and 30th Parliamentary Israel Allies Caucuses. Joined by the World Jewish Congress and the International Christian Embassy, members of Knesset founded the caucuses with parliamentarians from the 2 Baltic states. Both countries hosted huge events attended by hundreds of people to celebrate the Jewish state of Israel and their country's establishment of a governmental Israel Allies Caucus. Josh Reinstein, the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, said Israel is always at a disadvantage in international forums like the United Nations because of pressure from Arab states. But he added that our ability to garner support for Israel in individual countries through the establishment of 30 parliamentary Israel Allies Caucuses is unprecedented. The executive director of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, Jürgen Buehler, said, "As a Bible-believing Christian, I consider it a privilege to stand with the only democratic state in the Middle East." He went on to say that he was excited about partnering with the WJC and the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus to establish closer ties between Israel and the parliaments of Estonia and Latvia.
Israelis and Jews around the world celebrated Jerusalem Day last week, commemorating the 47th anniversary of the day that Israeli forces entered the old city of Jerusalem and reclaimed the Temple Mount. The date is marked on the 28th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar, in celebration of God ending the 2,000-year exile of the Jewish people from their most holy place and restoring them to Jerusalem, the united capital of the Jewish people. Parades and festivals are held to mark the joyous event throughout the Holy Land, and Israeli leaders publicly vowed that Jerusalem will never be redivided.
And this week, Jews will celebrate the festival of Shavuot, also known as First Fruits. The holiday commemorates the gift of the Torah to the Israelites at Mount Sinai. During the First and Second Temple periods, Jews from all over Israel were commanded to bring the first yield of their crops up to Jerusalem to give them as an offering to God. Shavuot is celebrated by eating grain and dairy products and is a time when all Jews thank God for the Torah, the land of Israel, and for the bountiful harvest which He has provided. We at Israel Now News would like to wish all of our viewers a happy Shavuot. Chag Shavuot Sameach.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here yet again on our beautiful rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Joseph Sabag. He's an attorney and he's an international policy expert. Joe, thank you for coming on the show.
Josh, it's great to be here with you.
Joe, you've been involved in a lot of different international policy issues concerning Israel, but probably the most significant to date is what you've been doing in state legislators. Can you tell our viewers a little about that?
Josh, I'm very pleased to say that we're headed in a very positive direction policy-wise with regards to what I refer to as bottoms-up policy making. And this is really policy that's happening at a grassroots level that's making its way through state legislatures and throughout the grassroots. And God willing, it's going to keep making its way up towards the federal level. What's happening now in particular is that we see our Christian friends in particular perceiving themselves as being actual stakeholders in the health and the vitality and the well-being of Israel, as opposed to just being supporters on the sideline wishing us well. And so this is manifest in them beginning to advocate the best interests of Israel and also the best interests of themselves as Christian communities who don't want to find their religious interests in the hands of Arab Islamic control. In particular, a state of Palestine would be very devastating for their interests. And so this has been manifest within a resolution, a policy expression that's been making its way through a variety of states, and at this point is really achieving widespread passage. And I'm pleased to say that this really represents a turning of the page for Israel with regard to the handling of U.S.-Israel affairs and the type of policy approach that we care to see advocated within government. So it's happening at the state level, and God willing, it'll make its way up to the federal level as well soon enough.
Your resolution highlights the importance of United Jerusalem and also the importance of sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Why aren't those two issues a given in U.S. policy? Why is that something that needs to be said specifically?
We have a particular problem, and that is the fact that we're lacking in education and proper leadership in the United States within the Christian Zionist and the Jewish Zionist movement. In particular, we need an understanding of Israel's claims, not just pursuant to what it says in the Bible, but also pursuant to international law stemming from the San Remo Resolution of April 25th, 1920. In particular, this was a binding act of international law that still is valid today. It's incumbent upon the United Nations to recognize this as a point of international law pursuant to Article 80 of their charter, yet they don't do so. What we need people to understand is that this is in fact not disputed territory. This is territory to which Israel is entirely rightfully here and welcome to exercise its sovereignty under international law. And in fact, Israel should not be afraid to go ahead and voice those rights and to begin to exercise sovereignty and to advocate this approach within the international community and certainly here within its policy posturing in Israel. And that, of course, would be manifest in the Levy report. And so hopefully we're also opening the doors to Israel itself really beginning to solidify its own self-perception, and beginning to advocate those rights externally. And the San Remo Resolution is really the starting point of those rights.
Both President George W. Bush and Barack Obama have called for a two-state solution, a Palestinian state for the Palestinians, Israel for the Jewish state, and to divide Jerusalem. This is something that would go against the interests of America. To create another terrorist Muslim state right in the heartland of America's greatest ally, Israel, would be something that's against American policy. Why does both Republicans and Democrats push this faulted policy?
Well, I want to say that there's a tendency to go along to get along, and I'm sure that that's something that we see relevant to other political issues as well in the United States. In particular, it gets back to what I mentioned before, a lack of proper education and a lack of leadership. And so we're really involved in just churning out and rehashing old ideas rather than being bold enough and strong enough to recognize failure where it's happened and to move ahead to healthier ideas, which of course are in the better interest of the United States, considering that Israel is really the United States' key ally, and it's not reasonable to expect that a Palestinian state, if it ever happened, would be an ally of the United States. I think most Americans can still think back to September 11th, 2001, and recall the images that were coming from the Palestinian streets, the handing out of candies to children in celebration of our suffering. With regard to the Republicans in particular, I've had a particular opportunity to make my way into those circles. That's where many of our Christian friends lie, particularly the evangelical folks. It's also where we find sentiment amongst the political conservatives to be particularly strong in favor of Israel. And so at the 2012 Republican National Convention, unfortunately, there was really a failure for the part of the Republican Party to go ahead and to make a movement in favor of stronger policies, which are singular in terms of being affirmative of Israel and the relationship between the United States and Israel, and not taking positions with respect to land for peace and pushing a peace process. Unfortunately, it ends up that the Republican Party, by virtue of its platform, is really handing the club to President Obama that he's constantly using to beat Israel over the head with. Every time the president comes out and says something that should be perceived as hostile towards Israel, he claims to be doing so in the name of a peace process, even though we understand that this is really just a form of ideological aggression that really can't necessarily be said to be in Israel's best interest. So what we'd like to see happen in the future is for the Republican Party to once again reinsert language into its platform that calls for the movement of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and that also is much more affirmative of Israel, recognizing that Israel should be free to make its own decisions about its future and its best interests, and to do so without American pressure pushing it in the direction of any particular outcome.
Joe, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
My message is simple, in particular the fact that we're being broadcast here on a network that reaches out to our Christian friends, vital friends. It's key that they understand that they are not supporters standing on the sidelines here. They are active stakeholders. All they need is a simple geography lesson. If they care to look at the map and to see where the sites that matter to them as Christians are located, and then they look where the green line would be drawn if President Obama and the United Nations and everyone else has their way in forcing this upon Israel, virtually everything that matters to them and their interests is on the wrong side of that green line. We're talking about free exercise of religion. We're talking about free access to the places that matter to them, and we're talking about basic respect and safety when they care to have those experiences. And those are interests that are not going to be safe in the hands of an Arab Islamic country. They are safe in the hands of Jewish friends and brothers and sisters who care to receive them here, to have them have those experiences and to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here, and to have those experiences with safety and respect, and to be able to stand in Israel with Israel when they come here to do so. And so again, I would just say our Christian friends need to perceive themselves as stakeholders and not simply as supporters.
Thank you, Joe, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
This is Jerusalem, Israel's capital city. It's an ancient and modern treasure that is beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
The world agrees. Iran plus an atomic bomb equals bad news and must be stopped. Why? Iran is the biggest exporter of terror in the world, spreading instability and death. Iranian missiles threaten the Western world, including Madrid, Rome, and Paris, and they're developing new ones which can reach the United States. Under the deal being proposed, Iran will halt its race towards an atomic bomb in return for the lifting of the sanctions which have been slowing it down. However, Iran's ability to make a bomb will remain intact. Now this is a big problem. Let's do a little bit of math to understand why. It takes between 2,500 and 3,000 centrifuges operating for a full year to enrich enough uranium for one nuclear bomb. Iran has a total of 19,000 centrifuges, which, if operated together, can produce a bomb within 6 to 7 weeks. Iran's plan is to reach a deal which relieves the sanctions without giving up the machines. Then, at the right opportunity, it will dash towards a bomb before the world has a chance to say boo. After all, this plan worked for its best buddy, North Korea. Like North Korea, Iran has an impressive track record of violating international agreements, including 6 Security Council resolutions. The difference between a good deal and a bad deal is one that includes dismantling the machines. This would give the world 3 years to know if Iran is building a bomb, to form a global coalition, and to take action. 6 weeks are simply not enough. Iran with a bomb is a global threat and will turn the Middle East into a nuclear nightmare. We need to do everything we can to stop it.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation by a lake. But this is the Sea of Galilee. The wonders of Israel are beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
What an exciting place to be, what an exciting place to visit. I'm talking to you about the land of Israel, the place where Jesus was born, and Jesus did his full ministry and went up to heaven. We'll come back one day to this very same land. Now you have the opportunity to come and visit this place in the summer tour 2014. This place is colorful, it's tasty, it opens the Bible in a new way, and it is very diverse. I will give you a small tour. Now we're in the desert. The beach, culture, history, big city life, awesome food. Israel is not just camels, hummus, and desert. Israel is also modern society. And one of the examples is the city of Tel Aviv, having beautiful beaches like this. In the summertime, these beaches are packed, and you can enjoy also this beautiful beach when we come to the summer tour, to this exact same place. So come along the summer tour 2014 to enjoy the land of Israel.
Coming up next, special Aliyah report from Ben Gurion Airport, Israel.
What you see behind us is today a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Behind me, Bnei Menashe from the country of Israel are arriving, and you are seeing today as prophecy is being fulfilled in front of your eyes. The Bnei Menashe are returning after 2,700 years back to their ancient homeland.
Therefore prophesy and say to them, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will open your graves and raise you from your graves, O people, and I will bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and raise you from your graves, O my people.
And this is taking place today because Christians around the world were willing to listen to the voice of God and were contributing financially to pay for the flights of those Bnei Menashe to come back today to Israel. The prophet Isaiah says in Isaiah chapter 49 verse 22, he says, "Behold, I am lifting up my hand to the nations, and they shall bring back your people from the four corners of this world, and they will bring them back to the land of Israel." Today, Gentile Christians around the world became part of this fulfillment of biblical prophecy of returning the Bnei Menashe to the land of Israel.
In the late 1970s, a few individuals from a small people group located in northeast India began to research the origins of their religious traditions and their ancestry. Their research led them to discover an ancestral connection to Israel. Under Persian rule, their ancestors traveled through the Silk Route to modern-day Afghanistan, Tibet, China, and finally to southeast India in the midst of Myanmar and Bangladesh. This group, called the Bnei Menashe or Sons of Menashe, are believed to be descendants from the lost tribe of Manasseh. Today, you can take part in the fulfillment of the ancient biblical promise to return the people of Israel to their homeland. The ICEJ has committed to sponsor future flights from northern India to Israel for an additional 250 Bnei Menashe. The flight costs for 250 Bnei Menashe to return is roughly $250,000 US. For many of the Bnei Menashe, returning to the land of the Bible is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, and a gift of $1,000 can help make that dream a reality for one of these individuals. No gift is too small. Every donation we receive to assist us in this important work is greatly appreciated, so please give generously.
Please help us in this coming weeks and months to bring more Bnei Menashe to the land of Israel. Become part of this modern day miracle of the prophetic fulfillment of ancient scriptures in our time, and help us with $1,000 per person to help them to return back to the land of Israel.
To make a donation, visit our website at www.icej.tv. or send a check to ICEJ, P.O. Box 1192, Jerusalem 91010, Israel.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.